Hello and welcome. I feel like dancing. Thank you so very much for joining us tonight as we celebrate 25 years of working to help some of our country's most vulnerable immigrants. We are live. This is a warning, so fingers crossed. I want to begin by reminding people that there would have been no Florida Rural Legal Services, no FIAC without sisters Catherine Cassidy and Maureen Kelleher. Without them, we wouldn't be here today. In 1995, the three of us were working for Florida Rural Legal Services. Sister Catherine was in Fort Pierce, Sister Maureen was in Immokalee, I was in Miami. And the sisters sounded the alarm bell and they said, hey, you know what? We've got to start planning to open our own office. And I'm like, oh, what? And they did that because following the Oklahoma City bombing, Congress was working diligently to pass 2 anti-immigrant laws that were going to just devastate immigrant communities. And they were also going to prevent attorneys like us who were working for legal services. They were going to prevent us from assisting most immigrants unless they were already legal. So we got to work. The laws passed. Year one, in January of 1996, we opened our doors. We inherited 3,000 cases that legal services could no longer take. That was 1,000 from legal services of Greater Miami, who went to us, and 2,000 that Sisters Catherine and Maureen split, 1,000 each from Florida Rural Legal Services. And here we are today, celebrating. So Sisters Maureen and Catherine have spent decades helping farm workers and other immigrants with nowhere else to turn. They are rock stars in their communities, and we owe them each a huge debt of gratitude, for real. Sisters, I hope you're there. I think you are, and we love you. I'm also thrilled to be joined tonight by Edwidge, by Gaby, by Markenzy, by the Honorable Rosemary Barkett, whose personal stories and work fighting for justice is truly inspirational. And so now we have a short video. It's going to try to cover some of the highlights of our past 25 years. So let's take a look. Well, that certainly brought back a lot of memories. So many of our clients fled unimaginable circumstances and saw America as their only hope. And their courage, their tenacity, their faith reminded me every day of what a privilege it was to serve them. And I'm constantly grateful for that privilege. And I just want to say something, speaking of clients, Gaby Pacheco. She is the one who deserves a lot of credit for DACA. Yeah, I remember when Gaby told me, Cheryl, you need to write an op-ed. You know, you got to let people know that Obama has the authority to grant relief to these kids. You got to do this, do it now. She's probably the one who got the op-ed or, you know, word about it to the White House and the Department of Justice as well. So thank you, Gaby. And I can't say enough about our staff. They're in the front lines, they're in the trenches, they're doing the heavy lifting day in and day out without complaint, and they never, ever give up. Some of our cases has taken 5 to 7 years to complete before winning. And some of these wins, honestly, you know, I've thought, how did you manage to do this? Very difficult cases that I have no doubt many others would not have ended up with a victory. The last 4 years have been particularly challenging for staff, with constantly changing immigration policies, practices, laws, fewer and fewer remedies available, but staff found a way. They kept re-strategizing, they were creative, and you know, they were able to win case after case. Whenever we win a case in our office, obviously we share the good news. And I remember one week when, I swear, there were about 4 different emails coming in. It was like, okay, detention team just got this person out of, you know, detention who'd been in there for way too long. Family defense program saying, hey, we prevented this family from being torn apart. Lucha team, hey, we just got a visa for a trafficking victim. Unaccompanied minor folks saying, we just got a green card for one of our kids. And I can tell you, for me, working remotely, I feel like I'm working twice as hard and getting half the amount of work done. So I don't know how our staff have accomplished all of this. And working remotely has been no easy task. But they do it without skipping a beat. So, and I also think it's important to point out, it's not just our lawyers, our paralegals, our accredited rep, who are part of the reason that, you know, we've been able to be so successful. The administrative staff, the staff who do data inputting, it takes a village, and we have a great village, and every single person on our staff is equally important. We're doing this virtually, right? Okay. Notarios, I just want to mention, it's more important than ever now that we have attorneys like ours who go the extra mile to try to ensure justice for their clients. During times like this, these unscrupulous notarios, these scammers crawl out of the woodwork, and far too often people come to us for help, and it's impossible to help them because the notarios have already lost their case. I want to take a very few quick moments to remember Holly Skolnick and Jonathan Demme, 2 dear, dear friends who are no longer with us, who will always be in our hearts. Jonathan was always there for us, no matter how busy he was. If we really needed help, he'd jump in a plane, he'd fly to Miami, he'd go meet with immigrants in detention, asylum seekers who'd been languishing there for months. He'd attend a news conference that we put together on behalf of innocent children who were being detained in crowded rooms in a local motel with armed guards standing outside their doors. He was always there for us, and he always encouraged his friends to support us. Jonathan was my secret weapon. And Holly, fierce advocate for human rights. For her, pro bono work was truly sacred. And here's a story you may not know about her. In 1980, when she and her husband, Richard, graduated from Harvard Law School, they took on a pro bono case of a woman who'd been convicted to death row and wrongfully convicted of a crime. Her name was Sunny Jacobs. They took her case, they won, naturally, and it inspired an acclaimed off-Broadway play called Exonerated and a made-for-TV movie. Susan Sarandon played Sunny, and someone played the crusading attorney who was Holly. They will always be a part of AI Justice. And now it is my pleasure and privilege to introduce someone I'm so proud to call a friend, Edwidge Danticat. At 9 years old, I said 9 years old, she started writing. At 12, she immigrated to the United States. At age 14, I remember what I was doing at 14. I didn't publish my first essay. She did. It was called An American Haitian Christmas. She got her master's in creative writing from Brown University. Her first novel, Breath, Eyes, Memory, was an Oprah Book of the Month. That was her first novel when she was like a kid. Her second novel, Crick Crack, won 2 prestigious awards, and everything she's written since then has won prestigious awards. In 2009, the John and Catherine MacArthur Foundation Fellowship gave her a very prestigious award. We call it the Genius Grant because it's awarded to geniuses. Now, most of us who knew Edwidge knew she was a genius long before the MacArthur Fellowship folks did, but we were very glad she received it. And now turning it over to Edwidge, whose elegant, passionate, and often magical stories have enriched the lives of so many of us. Hey there, Edwidge.
Hi, Cheryl. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here, and thank you so much for having me. Cheryl's talk brought back so many memories of so many friends, but I think the moment my relationship and association with AI Justice, then called FIAC, solidified was when I got a call in the middle of the night one October when my uncle, who was 81 years old, had left Haiti when there was some trouble there and was detained at the airport. And I was told that he was going to be sent to Chrome. I immediately thought to call Cheryl, and we sort of strategized, and she recommended some friends, lawyers, Ira Kurtzman and John Pratt, who went and tried to get my uncle out. But 5 days later, he died in the prison ward of Miami-Jackson, chained to a hospital bed. When something like that happens to a member of your family, you realize that you become very determined that it does not happen to other people. And AI Justice was already in that work, and they were very supportive and getting the story out there, not just as my story, but as the story of so many others, as so many others were going through. We were in 60 Minutes together. We traveled to Washington, D.C. together and testified before Congress. And I felt as even I was going through this story that I was living it with so many others, that we learned so many other people's stories that then we tried to amplify. But my relationship with AI Justice began 25 years ago. Before this story, I was working for Jonathan Demme as an assistant, and I used to write these letters that he would send to celebrities that Cheryl would call with a case, and we would try to do what we could with, and Jonathan would use the people he knew as celebrities. So he knew the importance of voices, just as AIG does. And we are never one voice in this struggle. And we've been through now, 25 years means a lot of different administrations, a lot of ups and downs, but we are it's a continued fight, and we're very, very lucky to have fighters and warriors like the lawyers that Cheryl talked about, everyone who works at AI Justice, who have made the last 25 years a lot more bearable than they would have otherwise been. So I'm very proud to count myself among the 25,000, maybe 25 million voices that they have helped. And I'm extremely honored to introduce another voice, Gaby Pacheco. And Gaby is an inspiration, an incredible voice, as Cheryl mentioned. And again, it's a voice that amplifies other voices and a voice that stands for other voices. She's nationally recognized as an immigrant rights leader. She gained national recognition in 2004 for her courageous advocacy of the DREAM Act. And we're still trying to get the DREAM Act finalized so that it's no longer a dream for so many people. In 2005, she founded Florida-based immigrant youth group advocating for in-state tuition for undocumented students. In 2010, with 3 other undocumented students, they led the Trail of Dreams, a 1,500-mile, 4-month walk from Miami to Washington, D.C. to call attention to the plight of immigrant families under the threat of deportation. Gaby was recently named one of Forbes 30 under 30 education in 2005 and was recognized as one of 40 under 40 Latinos in American politics. And like AIG, her Trail of Dreams makes all of our dreams more possible. Here is Gaby.
Thank you. It was 1993 when my family decided to move to the US. I was 8 years old. My parents did not know what was going on, but they hired an attorney, started a process, and began living their lives here in the US. I remember vividly the times my parents would ask my older sister, Erica, to please call Texas. She's the one that spoke the best English. Texas was the code word for Immigration Processing Center that our immigration paperworks were in. I can feel their anxiety and nervousness because I was just a child, I really didn't understand what was going on. The process fell through the cracks. It was a clerical mistake, something we would find out years later. When I was in 8th grade, I realized the predicament my family and I were in when my sister came home crying, upset at my mom because the local community college had told her that she couldn't go to college because she didn't have the right kind of papers. I too wanted to go to college. It was my dream, and I was working very hard in school to accomplish this dream. In high school, I was top of my class. I was in ROTC. I played the viola, was in the symphony. I ran cross country, was in track and field. And in my senior year, I had all AP classes. And when my college counselor called me down to guide me, she explained that because I was undocumented, going to college was going to be impossible. I was truly heartbroken, but not defeated. I knew that I would find a way. I eventually did, and this became the impetus to my activism. I began fighting for people like myself so that they can have access to higher education. I used to fly across the country in Washington, D.C. to speak on behalf of the DREAM Act and immigration reform. I would go to Tallahassee and fight for in-state tuition for undocumented students. I was a big mouth. And my big mouth on July 26, 2006 got me and my family into trouble. You see, somebody didn't like that I was advocating for myself, my family, my community, and was using my First Amendment right. And they called ICE on us. On that Wednesday morning, my parents and sisters were detained and taken to a processing center that was on 79th and Biscayne. Our immigration saga would start just then. The best immigration and world-recognized attorney, Ira Kurzban, took our case, and him and his law firm fought for my family until the very end, where nothing else could be done. During my time as an activist, I had come to learn about Americans for Immigrant Justice, an organization that I had seen how they had worked miracles to stop deportations of my friends and others. And when the best immigration attorney in town told me that there was nothing else they can do, I knew that there was one person in town that I needed to reach out to, and that was Cheryl Little at AIJ. AIJ, along with IRA, have fought for many years to keep my family in the United States. But that's not all. AI Justice was there for me when my 3 friends and I decided to walk from Miami to Washington, D.C. They represented us and were ready to fight for us in case we were to get detained. AI Justice was there with me at the White House when I was negotiating what eventually became known as the DACA program. AI Justice was there with me when I needed to submit my DACA application. And most recently, AI Justice was there when my sister, at her green card immigration interview with her US citizen husband, was detained and taken to Broward Transition Center. I was so scared that day, but I knew that I couldn't break down and cry. I acted quickly, and once again, I picked up the phone and called Cheryl Little. Cheryl's team astutely got my sister, immigration attorney, to go back into the room and get my sister's green card approved. She was detained for a couple of days, but through the work of AIJ, she was released shortly. Today, though she is still in limbo status, she works full-time and is an accounting student at FIU. My family would be separated, ripped apart, if it wasn't for the quick, strategic, and smart work that AI Justice knows how to do for immigrant families and people like myself. This community is stronger and protected because of the work of Cheryl Little and all the attorneys and staff who work at Americans for Immigrant Justice. And I am here where I am today because AI Justice was there for me, my family, and our community. Now, I take the great pride in presenting our next guest. For activists like myself who are pushing awareness and creating groundswell for change, having someone represent our fight for justice in the courtroom and in the community really energizes our efforts. Born in Haiti, a decorated Marine who served in Iraq, he was the first Haitian American prosecutor in the US Attorney's Office and has since had an active litigation practice with a top national law firm. Without further ado, please help me welcome a true fighter for justice and an example of personal triumph, AI Justice Board of Director member, Mr. Mark Lapointe.
There are so many compelling stories to tell, but I'd like to share with you a very short one. It's a Miami story. It's a quintessentially Miami story. It's about its streets, about its buildings, ultimately about its people. If you lived here in Miami about 30 years ago, and if you lived in Liberty City, like many of us who lived in Liberty City on one side of the track and worked in Key Biscayne on the other side of the track, and you needed to get to Key Biscayne, you didn't have a car, you had to take the bus. And the bus would take you from the heart of Liberty City, 10th Avenue, you'd go down 20th Street, and then you turn south, Biscayne Boulevard, and then 1st Street, Brickell Avenue, and then the Causeway. That was the route that my mother took for nearly 30 years as an immigrant. When she came here to the United States, she had, unlike others, she had no education. She had no particular sort of skills in any sort of fashion. And she worked for this restaurant called Stefano's. Stefano's was one of the most popular restaurants in town back in the late 80s, early 90s. And we would take that route. So when I came to the United States in the mid 80s, of course, my mom had this great job for me. Little did she tell me I was gonna be washing dishes at Stefano's. So that was the job, right? And I would go down the bus with my mom. I would be in the bus with her. We'd go down to Stefano's from Liberty City. We'd get on 6 a.m. So we can get there on time. And as we would get down to Biscayne Boulevard, you would have the One Biscayne Tower building on the right, and you would have the actual First Union building straight up. Back then, those were some of the tallest buildings in Miami. And I would ask my mom all the time because I was curious, because I wanted to know myself. I didn't speak any English. This was a very different culture, strange, all type, strange people, you name it, right? And I would ask my mom, what are these people, what do they do in those buildings? I would point to the First Union building. I would point to the One Biscayne Tower. What do they do? Because I was curious, because my life, my world was, as an immigrant, was to go from Liberty City with my mom and to go to work. And this was a completely different world. And at some point, my mom, who basically at this point doesn't know, she has no idea what people do in these buildings. And she says to me, I don't know what they do. I hope someday you get to work in one of those buildings. But right now, I got some dishes for you to watch. I want you to focus. That was my mom. That was her world. And Stefano's, as I mentioned earlier, was the top restaurant in town. It was a restaurant until about 10:30 p.m. And then it was a dance club, one of the busiest places in town. And you would go to the kitchen. It was trays upon trays of plates with tomato sauce dripping onto the floor, lamb and steaks partially eaten on the plates. And then you'd go down on the kitchen side, you'd have all the pots and the pans. That was the job. And my mom on the other side, she would clean the place. She would clean that place gets super dirty. She would clean the place, the floors, the restroom, and all of that. And I would help her out sometimes because there were times when she couldn't make it, she would get sick, and that was my job. As children of immigrants, you sort of become co-workers in many ways. You're their co-workers, you're their lawyers, that sort of thing. And that was a story for a very long time with my mom. And I still recall at times, I'd have her clean the restrooms. If you think, washing dishes at an Italian restaurant is hard work, wait till we get to the restrooms. That's beautiful. Mamma mia. You don't want that job, right? But that was our lives. That was the thing we did. And my mom did it. She did it with pride. She did it with courage. She did it with dignity. And that's all I know about the immigrants that I knew. The folks who came here from Haiti, like my mom, my aunts, and other places. And when I came here later on, that was our story. And that's how I believe AI justice is so important to me. That's why I care so deeply about AI justice. Because those people, there's a tendency at times to categorize certain immigrants based on where they're from, based on their education. If you look at my mom, for instance, you would look at her at the time, you would say, well, I'm not sure if this is the kind of immigrants that I want in this country. We've heard these types of conversations before. The fact of the matter, though, is these people are some of the hardest working people you're ever going to meet. And what AI justice does is, AI justice makes sure that their dignity is recognized. AI justice makes sure that all humanity is recognized. AI justice makes sure that it puts a mirror in front of us to remind us of our moral responsibility. AI justice makes sure that it puts a mirror in front of us to remind us of our goodness. That's what it does. That's why I'm so thankful for this organization. I'm so thankful to be part of this board. And I'm so thankful to get the chance to work with those people that I work with on a regular basis. Now, it is my distinct honor to pass the mic to our next speaker. She represents the richness of our immigrant and American story. She also brings to the table the perfect combination of brilliance and compassion. Born in Tamaulipas, Mexico, to Syrian parents, and spoke only Spanish until her family migrated to Miami in 1946. Becoming a US citizen at the age of 18, she has trailblazed her way through life since then. She became the first woman justice of the Florida Supreme Court. She then became the first woman Chief Justice of the Florida Supreme Court. And she went on to have a wonderful career on the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. And since October 2013, she has served as a judge on the Iran-United States Claims Tribunal in The Hague. With all those things I've said about Judge Rosemary Barkett, what impresses me the most about her is her heart, her transparent heart, and her commitment. Please let me welcome Rosemary Barkett.
Mark, thank you. Thank you so much. And thanks to all of you for joining us for this wonderful celebration. In 1996, when Cheryl Little and Sister Maureen and Sister Catherine started AI Justice, I am pretty sure that they did not envision that they would be here celebrating 25 years later. I'm sure they didn't anticipate all of the challenges that they've faced and met, and many of the triumphs that they have experienced throughout those 25 years. There's certainly a lot to say and to think about on this 25th anniversary of AI Justice. Certainly way too much to share in the 5 minutes allotted. And maybe that's not a bad thing to have a virtual celebration in order to limit our opportunity to say a lot. Thankfully, however, many of you on this program tonight have been on many parts of the journey that AI Justice has trod, and you already know AI Justice. So I don't really have anything new to say tonight. Rather, tonight for me is a marker, a reminder from three different perspectives. First of all, from the perspective of AI Justice itself, a celebration of remarkable accomplishment. Second, from the perspective of an American, a reminder of the place immigrants and immigration has had in our nation. And third, from the perspective of immigrants themselves, a reminder of the deprivation and the need which AI Justice was founded to address. So first, my first reminder is that we are entitled to an enormous celebration, Cheryl, especially, to stop for a minute and rest and acknowledge amazingly what has been achieved. I keep thinking of that biblical phrase, well done, you good and faithful servants. It has been an amazing feat for this small organization to have served over 150,000 immigrants in need over the past 25 years. So I hope all of you on this call, and you especially, Cheryl, are celebrating with a glass of something. I'm celebrating with a glass of something. So congratulations for everything that has been accomplished by you and your team. I'm going to wait until the end to take a sip. Second, as the immigration reform bill is once again being debated in Congress, I see tonight as an opportunity to remind ourselves once again of who we are in America, that our country is a country of immigrants, a fact that we sometimes seem to forget, even though from its origin in 1776, this nation recognized that we were established specifically to welcome people from different creeds, different nations, and different cultures. George Washington himself said so. And his declaration that the bosom of America is open to receive not only those of means, but the oppressed and persecuted of all nations and religions. And his sentiments were echoed by our presidents throughout our history, both Democrat and Republican presidents. And perhaps one of the best examples, which I cannot help quoting always when I talk about immigration, is the statement of President Johnson, who said, "America was built by a nation of strangers who have come from 100 different places. The land flourished because it was fed from so many sources, because it was nourished by so many cultures and traditions and peoples." As many of you know, and as Mark just noted, my family is one of those sources, a Mexican immigrant of Syrian parents. And I like to believe that the contributions our family has made, like the families of all of the people on this program and most of the people, if not all of the people watching tonight, have indeed continued to nourish America. We did come to this country in 1946, speaking no English, or very little. I think one of my sisters knew Notre Dame and the New York Yankees, but beyond that, we had to struggle to learn the language and the customs. And so this is this is my third reminder of this 25th celebration, and that is to remember and think about the perspective of immigrants themselves arriving on our shores. They are indeed, in many instances, the poor, the tired, and the oppressed. They arrive without knowing our language or our customs or our laws, but willing to undergo the hardships all of that entails and more, because they are drawn to the image that we ourselves have painted all over the world of a welcoming and caring nation. I don't have the time to paint a complete picture of what an immigrant family newly arrived in this country needs, or even more imminently, what the children who are here alone through no fault of their own need. But I really don't need to, because I know you already know it. I think I have a sacred duty to help. And tonight is a reminder for me that I must discharge that duty. So my third marker or reminder tonight is to thank AI Justice for giving me the opportunity to help through it. Like many of you, I cannot go into court to represent an immigrant child by myself, but I can help AI Justice to do so. And so I want to end with my expression of gratitude to Cheryl and Sister Maureen and Sister Catherine, and to all of the members of AI Justice FIAC before that, who have worked with them throughout the years and continue to do so. As a Mexican and Syrian immigrant, I am grateful for the opportunity to help others who have come after me. And as an American, I am proud of what AI Justice stands for and what it does every single day. Thank you.
Hello, once again. Last year, when we were together at the AI Justice celebration, our speaker was Jose Antonio Vargas. And he, like Gaby, is a DACA recipient. And actually, he was not even able to get DACA. He's still trying to stay in this country. But something that he's always said is, home is not something I should have to earn. And even though that is true, AI Justice has helped so many people earn this as their home. I wanted to close by reading a poem that I have seen at both celebrations and at protest. And it's a poem by a British, Kenyan, Somalian poet called Warsan Shire, and it's called Home. And I think it speaks so deeply to what the immigration experience is, not just here in the United States, but globally, and what AI Justice and so many other immigrant advocates are fighting for. So this is Home by Warsan Shire, an excerpt from it. No one leaves home unless home is the mouth of a shark. You only run for the border when you see the whole city running as well. Your neighbors running faster than you, breath bloody in your throats. The boy you went to school with who kissed you dizzy behind the old tin factory is holding a gun bigger than your body. You only leave home when home won't let you stay. No one leaves home unless home chases you, fire under your feet, hot blood in your belly. It's not something you ever thought of doing unless the blade burns threats into your neck. And even then you carried the anthem under your breath, only tearing up your passport in airport toilets, sobbing as each mouthful of paper made it clear that you wouldn't be going back. You have to understand that no one puts their children in a boat unless the water is safer than the land. No one burns their palms under trains beneath carriages. No one spends days and nights in the stomach of a truck feeding on newspaper unless the miles traveled means something more than the journey. No one crawls under fences. No one wants to be beaten, peded. No one chooses refugee camps or strip searches where your body is left aching, or prison because prison is safer than a city of fire. And one prison guard in the night is better than the truckload of men who look like your father. No one could take it. No one could stomach it. No one's skin would be tough enough than your child's body in pieces. No one leaves home until home is a sweaty voice in your ear saying, leave, run away from me now. I don't know what I've become, but I know anywhere is safer than here. No one leaves home unless home won't let you stay. For people whose homes wouldn't let them stay for 25 years, AIG has been helping them define a new home. Our voices are much more powerful with yours. So thank you and happy 25th anniversary, AIG Justice.
We'll take whatever you say. That's great. Thank you so much for that extremely moving piece. In conclusion, you know, we've been faced with many challenges over the past 25 years. We had the Oklahoma City bombing, we had 9/11. Obama became known as the deporter in chief, and then we had the past 4 years. But we've survived, thanks in large part to each of you. We wouldn't have made it to year 25 without you. No question about it. I can tell you that. The good news is the past 25 years have prepared us for the opportunities that lie ahead with the new administration. Staff is already reviewing proposed policies and legislation. We're working with national NGOs to try to ensure that immigrants' basic rights are protected as best as possible. But it won't be easy. It won't be easy because immigration is complicated, it's confusing, it's political, it's divisive, it's controversial. But with your continued help, whether volunteering, whether sharing our story, whether contributing financially, we will continue saving lives and, and ensuring that America lives up to its ideals. Last couple of things I want to say is we're going to be, there are going to be 25 stories in our social media during the rest of this year. Stories from staff, from clients, from supporters. And just tonight, I believe we launched a special section in our website that's going to enhance and supplement some of the things that were featured in our video. So thank you so much. It was wonderful spending some time with you. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening, and please stay safe and keep hope alive. Bye-bye.